Okay, this is a fun topic. It's actually probably one of the more interesting topics in a lot of respects for people that are associates. And it also highlights a lot of things for partners as well, or people that are considering becoming partners, because everyone sets goals for themselves when they're young or when they're trying to advance, and they don't always realize what's involved in those goals. And the things that are difficult about being a part, depending on the firm, are also things that the law firm will let you buy if you're capable of doing when they're considering potentially making you a partner. And it's also important to realize the challenges that you may be facing when you do become a partner. I always like to talk about my favorite thing to do is actually to recruit and talk to attorneys and to talk to law firms. And that's what I love doing. But I'm in a role now where I'm essentially operating a business. And so I'm in charge of a lot of people and things and processes and procedures. And a lot of great part of me wishes I could go back and spend all of my time recruiting, but it's just it's not where I'm at. It's the same thing with a lot of partners. A lot of partners would almost give anything to be able to go back and be associates. And once you understand what's involved, but the things that a lot of associates and young attorneys believe that once you become a partner, that you're a lot of things that you don't like about being an associate will disappear. And in most cases, most partners would tell you two things. The first is that it's much more stressful and much more involved being a partner. But the second thing is a lot of them actually do very much enjoy being partners, but at the same time, there are many more challenges. I would say that this is just my observation. And again, there are lots of exceptions to this, but young first year associates or second year associates coming out of the law school, believing that the world is that they have a lot of potential. I would say that their self esteem in many cases is much higher than and better than partners and even some of the most major law firms and the majority of them. Once you get a taste of the world and the challenges out there, it can be very stressful. And it's definitely in terms of the responsibility that you have as a partner, there's a lot more. I would say that the skills are completely different than what's required to be an associate and what's required to be a partner. So it's important to, if that's what you want to do, to understand the challenges. And one thing that I always see too that's pretty alarming is I've known hundreds, probably more than that, people that have become partners in major firms and then haven't been able to hold on and just basically weren't able to hack it. And that's what this is going to be about today. There's so much involved in terms of what's involved, what you need to do, how you need to be prepared, the challenges you have. And a lot of partners are really very much looking to escape. And associates, when they escape, they think they can go in house and so forth. But in a lot of cases, even partners with business are looking to escape too. So I'm going to talk about a lot of those pressures today. But the big point to understand is that these challenges are very severe for partners and much more so than you would expect as an associate. So the first thing is that partners have pressure to bill, and they have significant pressure to bill hours. And it doesn't really matter where they get the work from, evaluated just as associates are. And in many cases, they're actually expected to work just as many, if not more hours as associates. And their pressure is to bill hours. In order to bill hours, they need to get work. They need to have clients trust them and pay bills. They need to continue having hours come in. And if a partner does not have hours coming in and billed hours come in, they're in a real threat of losing their job. And they know that if they even have a few slow months of work, it can be bad. Partners, when their work slows down, will often lose their jobs. They can, if they're an equity partner, they can be de-equitized and are be asked to leave. And literally your career could be over very quickly as a partner when your work slows down. And if it stays that way for an extended length of time. Now, law firms give partners breathing room, of course, to if things slow down, but it's not forever. And in some law firms, it's less breathing room than others. When I was actively recruiting every day, I would receive lots of calls from partners and also emails, resumes, and so forth of partners that may have lost a major client, whose firm may have lost a major client, who no longer have work, who may have upset somebody, and so forth. And so all this when I talk to them, I'll say, how many hours have you billed? And a lot of times they'll say, I built 1,200, I built 800. And when you hear numbers like this, you pretty much can assume that the partner is going to be at some point losing their job. Now, associates many times can actually last longer than partners when their hours get low, but partners will often lose their jobs very quickly when their hours slow down. And I've seen people with very low hours, even for a couple of years, turn that around, but it's a very bad sign. And if a partner does not have a lot of their own work, many partners, especially service partners and a lot of law firms, will need to have seek work from partners who do have the work. That can also be a very difficult situation because many times when a partner's getting work from other partners, they may only be getting it from one or two other partners in the firm. The only partners that can give other partners work are partners that have a lot of work that can be billed on high hourly rates. And so at many firms, there's not a lot of them. So those service partners need to be very solicitous and very nice to the partners that are giving them work. And if they're not there, they can be in a lot of trouble very quickly. And that's very stressful. It's very stressful knowing that your entire livelihood even in a large 1,000 plus attorney firm, there's partners that rely on maybe one or two partners for all of their work. And if they upset that partner, they can be in a lot of trouble. That can be very scary. Sometimes the generating partner that's giving their work will leave the firm, or that partner may lose a client, and the service partner is in a lot of trouble. And it's much more difficult, as I said earlier, for partners to get work from other partners than it is for associates to get work from partners. That without getting too far into it, the way the compensation typically works in most law firms is a partner will make more money if they do work themselves. If they give their work to other people, they will make less money. So if they give work to other partners, that's less work that they can do themselves because that's work that's billed out at a high hourly rate. Most of the time, clients want the partner that they have the relationship with to do the work, not some other partner. And then also that when there's a lot of time, there's a lot of pressure for partners inside of law firms to give work to partners that are associates because associates have lower billing rates. And so because partners are more expensive, it's much more difficult for them to get work from other partners. So as you get more senior, it becomes even harder to get billable hours. And in most compensation systems, you give partners more money when they do their own work as opposed to giving it to other people. And that's just how it works. But the partners that are very good at billing hours and getting work typically are very talented, and they may have special skills that their colleagues will give to them to impress their clients. They're more often than not the people that have the most work, very good salespeople. So they're consistently able to generate work by networking, by setting up relationships with people outside of the firm or internally sometimes, but they can be very good salespeople. I remember I was working with a partner that had a huge book of business not too long ago. I don't know what it was, but it was pretty big. It was maybe $20 million. And I was talking to another partner about him, and they said, yeah, there's some people that are good at bringing in the work, and there's other people that are good at doing the work. And the one that had $20 million in business was giving a lot of his work to other people, but very good at networking, very good at personal relationships. And people that do that internally also can do very well. But every partner, regardless of who you are and the firm you're at, needs to be selling. You need to be selling and getting work internally and also doing a very good job, or you need to be selling and getting work externally. And what ends up happening to a lot of partners, and a lot of them do not stick around. So they will make partner, but then they will experience a lot of unhappiness as systems and things take hold, whatever firms are in. And when I say systems and compensation systems, is eventually a lot of them are unable to get enough work. They either overinvest in getting work internally, and then that dries up or something happens, or they get on the outs politically for some reason, or they underinvest externally and don't get work that way. And all sorts of things can happen to partners. There's a lot of pressure for them to bill hours and to get hours. It's a huge pressure. And it's really the main reason that partners start looking for work and will lose their positions. They just don't have the hours. And then if they can't get the hours internally and they can't get them externally, they're in trouble. They have to be able to stay in business. And honestly, in my position, I see hundreds of partners per week applying to work with us. A lot of them do have a business, but a lot of them don't. And most of the time when a partner's looking for work, it's because they're just not getting the hours. And so what do? They will put together these business plans, and the business plans will talk about how they're going to get work. And more often than not, there's not really any truth to that, because if the business plan had work, they would have gotten work a long time ago. And frankly, I've never seen, I'm sure it happens, but nothing's going to turn around with a business plan. You need to basically, in order to get work, you need to have a long-term plan, and you need to focus on it. And it needs to be part of what your goal is. And your goal as an attorney, this is just for everyone's benefit, whether or not you're a partner or associate. Your goal needs to be to get as much work as you can. But preferably people giving you work as their attorney. And the only way you do that, you could rely on your firm to do that for you, which makes sense in some major firms. Certainly, if you're at a lot of major firms, that your firm may be able to give you work the rest of your career. But in most cases, the most successful people are able to get work externally. And I know there are lots of firms where there's partners that are billing 2,500 hours, 3,000 or more hours per year, many billing far beyond that amount. A lot of them, by the way, this is just for your, I shouldn't say this, but a lot of them aren't really technically billing those hours. They may be socializing and meeting clients or thinking about their matters, but they're not, it's not the same kind of billing a lot of times that associates are doing. I don't know what I really kind of that beat around the bush with that, but the hours have to be very high. And if you have good relationships with clients as a partner, your hours can be high and they will pay your bills, but you still need to have continuous access to work to generate those sorts of hours. And it's very important. I've known partners with a lot of business. This is just an aside that bill 3,000 hours plus per year. And really, I don't think they're billing that much, but they're bringing in clients and they're able to bill that much based on just talking on the phone and things like that with them. So it's not the hard kind of concentrated work that you always think about for other attorneys. A lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't. And so that's about the hours. But the hours are the most important thing. Just remember that the more senior you get as an attorney, the less people want to give you work. That's just how it works. And there are situations you can find yourself in if you're a senior attorney where people will give you work, lots of them when they have the work. But generally, most clients are not willing to pay for senior people to do work. And most partners are not willing to give other partners work unless they have a lot of work themselves. And this is the main dynamic. And the reason I highlight this at the beginning, just so you understand, is for every person that I see become a partner in a good sized law firm, more than 30 to 50% of them end up doing something else. They go in house, then they go to a smaller law firm and never really reaching their potential because they can't get the hours. And this is very important. And it needs to be part of your set of goals, things that you're always realizing. These external relationships you get are extremely important. Being involved in things and making sure if you want to stay in a law firm, the rewards are great. If you can get a lot of billable hours and become a partner in a law firm, you suddenly have a lot of control. You're basically running a business and the law firm is supporting you, which is cool. And they're giving you associates, they're giving you an office, they're giving you IT staff, they're giving you a brand, they're giving you clerical support, all that sort of thing. But you need to be able to build the hours to earn that. Now, the next one is related to that is pressure to build business. Most partners and law firms under a lot of pressure to generate business. They know that they can't always rely on other attorneys to give them work, so that they really do want to generate their own business. A lot of them don't know how, but in the early stage of their career, a lot of partners will try to get business and they know that it's important. In many law firms, there's partners that will spend, a junior partnership will spend a few hours on the phone each day, cold calling potential clients to get new work. If you don't generate business, your prospects are often very limited and you become part of a cycle of dependence on others for work. It's funny. I tell this story. You've probably heard me tell it before. But when I was in law school, there was this like dynamic. I was a odd law, not in a bad way, but there was this dynamic where everyone acted like they weren't working and they were playing softball all the time and not studying. And I thought that was odd. I was like, wow, it's like law school is supposed to be competitive, but no one's really working. Wonder why that is. And then I got this new dog and this puppy, and I started going out and walking this dog. It would get up at 1 a.m, 4 a.m. And I was in this apartment complex where you could see where it was basically all other first year law students. And I remember going out one day at 3 a.m. and seeing all these lights on and people they would have their desks next to the window and all these people studying. And they were the same people that acted like they never studied. And so they were almost like acting as if it wasn't important to study. But it was almost like competitive because they were trying to make everyone else think that there was no need to study when they were really studying hard. I think it's like that in a lot of cases with attorneys and law firms. Attorneys and law firms will tell you, the ones that are very successful, a lot of times they'll pretend like they're not trying to generate business. So they'll pretend like this is all very easy, but the ones that really succeed are spending a lot of time generating business, just like the people were studying in the middle of the night. They spend several hours a week and they'll go out to dinners with potential clients and other people several times a week, sometimes 4 or 5 times a week. And they do this for decades. This is what it's about. Even at the largest firms. And this is how you become successful. You have to be able to generate business. You can't sit in your office and expect business to appear if you don't invest in going out and getting it. You have to do that. And just because you're smart, just because you went to a good law school, and just because you're at a good firm, just because whatever, if you don't go out and do this, you're going to be in a lot of pressure, a lot of trouble. The other thing I will tell you is the partners that do this well, and to do it well these days means 5, $10 million book of business, which is good, but that there's big cities, there's partners, multiples of that, tens of 20, 30, 40. But to do this, you need to go out and meet people. You need to get involved. And if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. And there's going to be long-term consequences. If you don't exercise several days a week, you're going to be out of shape or do something. If you don't, but the same thing with business, you are getting business. The thing that's nice about being an associate is you can get work from others and you'll get trained. But partners need to have their own business. Otherwise it's out of control. And you can start in a law firm and work there for 10 years without business, but you can't start as a partner and expect to work anywhere very long without business. And it's just very important. And I don't really know what else to say, but this is what partners do. And again, I just want to leave you with the message that the people, I study success. I study what makes partners succeed because this is all I do. And the ones that do very well they're dedicating almost as much time to generating business as they are working. You may think that's insane. A lot of these partners, they're basically just spending they're on Uber all the time or have drivers, some of them, because they have to meet with people all the time. This is what it takes to do well. Then the other thing is the pressure to maintain business. Once you do get business, you're going to be evaluated based on your ability to keep the business. If your business falls, you're going to begin to feel a lot of pressure from management. The way you're thought of by your peers will go down. Your compensation will go down quite dramatically often. And it's very difficult for a lot of partners to maintain businesses. But many times it depends on what your practice area is. But you have to be able to maintain business. And you can't do it in a dumb way. What's a dumb way of generating business? That would be having one client that gives you a lot of work. Because if you have one client that gives you a lot of work, that's good for a short time, but that can go away very quickly. I've seen people make partner in giant firms by bringing in one huge client. I mean, like a major client, I don't know, IBM or something. But then when that client goes away, then all of a sudden they're in trouble. So that's something just to be very aware of. One large client can make a huge difference. Generating business can often be difficult because the larger the firm you're at, the more conflicts there are. So a lot of firms, there's just so many conflicts, it can be very difficult. And so many partners will be very upset because every time they try to bring in a client, there'll be conflicts, and associates are just given work. They don't necessarily have to depend on that. There's also a lot of pressure to increase your business. So what happens is after you start bringing in business, then the law firm, if they're smart, which they should do, but it's not fun, will set goals. So they'll say, do you think you can get 20% more work or 30% more work the next year? So the law firm is managing the partners as well, trying to get extra money from them. And so pretty much most partners understand that they're only as good as their last year collections. And most law firms, partners will be given new goals each year that will require them to get more and more business. And that can be very stressful. So you're never really resting. And for an associate, you can sit down and come to work and leave and get your work done. But as a partner, you constantly have a new goal to increase things. And if you don't, that can be problematical. And then partners also have a lot of pressure to help other partners generate work. They're expected to help other people generate business. They can use that. If they're a subject matter expert, they're expected to come in on different pitches and they may help prepare proposals and so forth. And they may be expected to cross-selling. I saw a partner once, it was a major firm, and it was a 1,500 plus attorney firm. And the partner was in, I don't know, something like maybe Chicago, and they were asked to go down to Texas and help with a pitch. And they were actually head of the Chicago office, I think. It might have been Chicago or maybe Minneapolis, but I don't remember. But they were expected to go down and help out with the pitch. And they showed up and they were just obnoxious. And they literally, because they were so obnoxious, they got fired from the firm. Now did some other things that weren't that appropriate. They made some bad remarks, but at the same time, you have to help out in pitches. You can get in trouble. And a lot of partners will complain. They spend a lot of time on pitches and helping cross sell, and it doesn't lead anywhere. But that's part of the job of a partner. And then there's also a lot of pressure to give other people work. So once you do get work, then all of a sudden other partners are trying to get work from you. And so you're going to be under a lot of pressure to keep them busy. And they will remind you that they gave you work in the past. And you will also feel a lot of pressure from associates trying to make hours. So everyone's trying to be nice to you when you have work, and you're under a lot of pressure to give work, even if your client doesn't always need the work. And you'll be evaluated based on formulas many times. And going to take into account the amount of work they're able to give others. It is another way that people are evaluated as well. And sometimes associates are hard to work with individual partners. And so that you're not keeping that associate busy, that can create problems too. And that works as well. So there's also a lot of pressure to collect bills. Contrary to popular belief, a lot of attorneys have problems collecting bills. In the smaller the firm, the harder it is to collect to collect bills. I remember there was a well-known attorney that I know. I think he might be at Greenberg Traurig now, or I don't know, but he's at a very good firm. And he had a business where he was a small law firm of 2 or 3 attorneys. And he said that the best he hopes to get 80% of what he bills out, but he usually takes 60. It's very difficult the smaller the firm you are to collect bills. Now, larger firms are generally able to collect their entire bills, but in smaller firms, it can be very difficult, and it's unglamorous and can be stressful. It's upsetting when people don't pay because you often lose clients. It can strain relationships, and it's not fun. And the firm will put pressure on partners to collect on their bills too. And so that's part of the job. And people will often bring in clients that aren't good clients that don't pay their bills. And so just because you think it's a good client doesn't mean they're always going to pay their bills. And that can be stressful. There's always a lot of pressure from all partners to accept less money from the firm. So firms or businesses, they typically have people in them that generate a lot of work and they do a lot of work. And then the older they are, typically they have layers of bureaucrats that don't have work that want to get paid a lot of money too. So they will figure that they can pressure the people that are bringing in the work, doing the work, to give them a percentage of the billings and so forth that they're bringing in. And every attorney's book of business or the money is that they're bringing in is constantly under threat by the firm. The firm's always going to, not all firms, but most firms will always try to pay them much less than they otherwise could, much less than they believe they should be paid. What'll happen typically is a partner may have a very good year. They may bring in, I don't know, who knows, but they may bring in a lot more money than they did the previous year. And the firm will say, this is great, you did this, but we're not going to pay that much more this year. If you have a slow year in the future, though, we'll make it up to you then. That rarely happens, but that's what they say. And they're not always honored. There's very few instances where partners are receiving the amount of money they believe that they're entitled to based on how much work they're bringing in. There's always firms that will pay them more money or agree to pay them more money, at least for 1 or 2 years, and then we'll cut their money. I had a funny experience happen not too long ago. I was talking to this woman she was in Orange County, and I don't know what year she was, but she was she was maybe like a 10th or 12th year associate. And she'd been at like, I don't know, 6 firms. I was like, this is crazy. Why have you been at so many firms? And she said, every 2 to 3 years, the partner that I started my career with moves, because what happens is he starts at one firm and they agree to pay him a certain amount. He has a good year. He gets paid that amount. Then the next year they come back and they try to cut his compensation, and they do the same thing the next year, even though he's got the same amount of business. And then he moves, and the same thing happens over and over again. So this is one of the challenges of being a partner, is that you can't give agency to others to control your compensation. You're always going to be under pressure to fight for your compensation and what you're getting. And again, firms can pay, if you don't have any business, they will often pay very little. It can cause a lot of stress. And at least when you're an associate, you know what you're going to get paid for the most part, but you really scary. As a partner, you will often lose a lot of power in your compensation. And it's very stressful. It's just a very hard job because you have to fight for compensation. You have to fight for clients. You have to compete with the people that are setting your compensation, that are often trying to get money for themselves, that are bureaucrats. It can be a nightmare. It's very difficult. The other thing is there's a pressure of a practice area relevant to your firm. So what'll happen is there's all sorts of different practice areas. You may spend years developing a practice area. It could be data privacy or trademark or employment, who knows, but whatever practice area you cultivate, it could go away. The firm could decide that they don't like the practice area. The firm could decide that it's not a good practice area anymore. The firm could decide can't bill enough money in that practice area. There's all sorts of things that can happen. And when that happens, the firm literally may just get rid of that practice area. The firm gets rid of that practice area, you can be out of a job or you have to switch practice areas. So that can be uh, very difficult as well to have a practice area that's relevant to the firm. And so you need to keep that. You have help pressure to help with recruiting. Believe it or not, most partners do not enjoy recruiting. As a matter of fact, the majority of them, especially the ones that are busy, I would say hate it. When I say hate it, I don't mean that they hate it as much as it gets in the way of their productivity, but they're expected to assist with recruiting. They may have to travel to law schools. They may have to talk to people in the office during the day when they're trying to bill hours and talk to clients. They may have to go to various events in the summer and they will get some type of credit for it, but it's not billable hour credit. Costs money. They have to answer the same questions over and over again. What do you think of this firm culture? Which is funny because I know people that have been at 15 firms and they talk about the culture. They just smile and they think they're all the same and they all blend together. And imagine if you're at your 10th firm and talking about what makes your culture special. And there are very unique cultures in law firms, but it's every time you go to a firm, it's going to be a different culture. And then again, I talked about this earlier, but there's a lot of tension, pressure to find clients where there's no conflict. Most firms that are established will have a lot of clients where there's conflict. And so they can't bring in clients and often certain entire industries. And when they try to bring in clients, that can be difficult. So they can cultivate relationships and then those go away. The other thing is that there's a lot of pressure for attorneys to look good in the community outside of work. Partners will often, it's sometimes humorous, the number of activities they're involved in, but they will under a lot of pressure to be on committees and be in various leadership roles outside of work. It could take up a lot of time. So you may be trying to, in the middle of a huge transaction and you have to go sit at a Ronald McDonald House meeting. There's just a lot of pressure to be seen outside of work. And this is what, by the way, good attorneys do. They join all these organizations, and these organizations do not have to be organizations that are relevant to that even seem like you can get business from them, but most of the time they are. And they're under a lot of pressure to do that. I was sitting, I went out to lunch, I don't know, not too long, well, a while ago, with someone that was an attorney and a very successful one. I was talking to her about her practice and she couldn't believe that there were people sitting around this restaurant or outside by the beach during the day. She said, what do these people do? Like, why would an attorney ever come here during the day? It was like a meeting place but anyway, most attorneys a lot of times will, because there's so much pressure to be involved in the community, so much pressure to bring in business, they will spend a lot of their time doing that and will only many times be part of organizations and do things when they believe that are going to lead to business. And when I say the most successful attorneys are busy nurse means they'll say, "Oh, it's 2 or more nights per week." That's definitely true. In many cases, it's more than 3 nights a week. They're spending as much time as they possibly can. They don't just go home at night after work. So most of the part of their day actually starts when the work day ends. So they may get up and be at work by starting at 5:30 or 6, and then by 4, they're out meeting with people or even at lunch. So this is just how it works, and it's how being successful works. And the public relations and the public image is very important. I take it very seriously, and I've had some bizarre experiences with attorneys. Their public image, they can literally believe that they're ruined if someone says something bad about them. There's a lot of pressure to keep up their image. I had this thing happen a few years ago where this pretty famous known attorney, wanted to have lunch with me, and I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! He wants to have lunch with me. This is great." And not only that, but he traveled to Malibu, California, where I live and work, to meet with me. And I was like, "This is amazing! This famous attorney is flying all the way from." I don't remember. It was somewhere in the Midwest. And so he came and wanted and met him for lunch. And I sat down and I was talking to him for a half hour and I thought that I didn't know what he wanted. And then after, it was very strange. After about 30 minutes, he took his computer and he said, "This is what I want. And this is why I'm here." And he pointed his computer towards me and he had some kind of screen on it. So it was blocked out. You could only see it one way. And it said something like, this publication that I used to have, I still have it, had written an article about him getting arrested, which I never even didn't even know about it. And he said, "I really need you what he wrote said, "I really need you to take down this article. It's hurting my family." I was like, wow, so he didn't say anything. He just had this thing on his computer and that's why it was there. And I was shocked, but it was just because there was a negative article about him. It had been up there. And that's why he had come out. And then I knew another attorney that he knew that was the dean of a top 10 law school. So I called that dean and I said, "This is what happened with this guy. This is really strange." And he said, "Yeah, but imagine how hard it was for him to get it taken down off of all these other publications." And I didn't, anyway, so that's how that developed. So people have a lot of concern with their public image, how other people are seen. And I've seen so many attorneys not make mistakes, even not very serious mistakes. This article about this guy too, it wasn't anything that serious. It was about him getting in an argument with his wife and he was drunk and the police coming or something. But it was just, yeah. So if you look bad outside the office, law firms will often get rid of you. There's also a lot of pressure to become an equity partner. So there's two tiers of partners in law firms. There's partners that are essentially income partners, which is no different really than being an associate, but they give you a title. And then there's equity partners who get a percentage of the firm's profits. And many times, if you're a non-equity partner, they'll give you that title with the expectation that you use that title to go out and get business. But if you don't bring the business within a certain length of time, then the firm will often ask you to leave. And it's very common. I've seen that happen to more attorneys than it's just very common for that to happen. So that can be very difficult. So if you're a non-equity partner, you're often in pressure there. Now, there's certain firms, by the way, that are very good firms. Kirkland and Ellis, it's a great firm. And they do something where they make a lot of non-equity partners. They're non-equity partners. They do very well. And they just don't have a lot of firms do not have us. It's very difficult to become an equity partner. There's also a lot of pressure to stay an equity partner. What a lot of firms will do is if you're not generating business, you're not bringing in the hours, and they'll de-equitize you, they drop you down, and it's highly embarrassing, but they don't want to share the profits with someone if you're a little bit of a cost center. It's just how it works. It could be very scary. So you're always under pressure for your entire career that if things slow down, you could lose that title. And so that's something that creates a lot of stress until you become more established with clients. There's also a lot of firm work at a low cost. So just keep in mind that if you bring in a client, the client's going to say, how much is this going to cost me? How much am I going to spend? And in order to bring in that client and get them to have to do the work, you have to be able to deliver the work at low cost. An associate can sit down and bill 40 hours on something, but as a partner, you have to basically realize you have to send a bill to the client. The client's only going to pay it if they believe that the pricing is fair. And the client won't give you work again if you overbill. You're under a lot of pressure from the firm to bill out at a high rate, to bill many hours and to collect a lot of money. But at the same time, you're under a lot of pressure from the client to do the opposite. So if you think about that, that can be very stressful. Partners, in order to hold on to business, may do things like tell associates not to bill more than a few hours, or they may actually underbill there to keep the cost low because they want to hold on to the client. And they may have to write down hours. And if they do that, then the firm will be mad. So if an associate works 30 hours on something and you only bill 20 to the client, the firm may say something about that. And that can be very stressful. The law firm is always competing with you and trying to get you to bill as much money as possible. And the client's trying to do the opposite. You're trying to hold on to the client because that represents your livelihood. There's also a lot of pressure to perform work at high costs. What the law firms will always do to their partners is they'll keep raising their rates to the point where the rates just get ridiculous. The partners will say, who's going to pay over $1,000, $1,500 an hour for this type of work? Doesn't make any sense, but that's what the law firms do. They're trying to get as much leverage and as much profits. They're trying to get the partners that work for them to bring in as much money as possible. And that's difficult because if you're doing work for a client, you have to be able to be competitive with other people are charging. And many times if your work rates are double or triple for relatively simple work, that's not something that the law firms that your clients are going to be interested in. So you're under a lot of pressure at any firm to perform work at a high cost. And then you have to be on the right side of management. So a lot of times the committees and other people will decide who gets what. So partners are under a lot of political pressure to get on the right side of management and the people making decisions. Most partners are trying to ingratiate themselves constantly with people that are making decisions. Sometimes the people that are making compensation decisions are partners with business, but a lot of times they're people that don't have business. They may be senior attorneys or bureaucratic roles. A lot of larger firms will actually have professional management. It doesn't even have to be an attorney. But you need to be on the right side of management. And if you're not on the right side of management, all of a sudden your compensation can go away. Everything can go. And you will suddenly be paid less. You'll be held to higher standards. You'll be evaluated harshly. And that can often be just because of, it could be because of your clients. There was, speaking of Kirkland Nellis, there was I think that they had some big gun case with some partners there and that went to the Supreme Court. And after it was decided, the firm just didn't, that wasn't what they wanted. Whatever the partners were doing wasn't what they wanted to be associated with. Because of that, those partners had, that you were told either to get rid of this client or leave the firms, they left. So you have to be on the right side of management. You're also under a lot of pressure to mentor and train others. You're expected to go out with law students and young attorneys and other people when you would probably rather be developing business. Imagine yourself having to go talk to preschoolers at your age and about how great preschool is. It's just not something you probably want to spend a lot of time doing, but that's what partners have to do. You're being practicing for over 30 years and suddenly have to go meet with an associate about something, a law student. It's just go to firm events and talk about things that you may not have any interest in being there. And or answering dumb questions. It's not fun. And yeah. And then there's also a lot of legacy costs depending on in the firms. A lot of times firms will have pensions. Some of them will have salaries or guarantees that were generated to bring over partners that may not be sustainable. There's office space. Imagine there's events that happen where the firm no longer needs all its offices. There's cost of paying those over a long period of time. There's a lot of pressure many times in existing partners of the firm, especially those that are equity partners, to pay a lot of legacy costs that they may not generate any revenue from or generate any benefit from. There's also pressure to hire and keep good associates. They not only do partners need to be able to afford to pay huge salaries for associates, which they don't like because it essentially can make them less competitive. Because they have to charge their clients more, but they also don't like it because it's less profit for them. But then they also have to be able to hold on to associates. There's partners in every firm that are considered mean or difficult to work with, and where people have bad experiences with them and quit. And law firms don't like that. So those partners are under a lot of pressure and to be nice to people when they would rather not, or I think what they're doing is stupid. So it's just, there's a lot of pressures many times not to give too much work, not to review people too harshly and all that sort of stuff. And they also need to hold on to people because they don't want to have to do all the work on their own. And many times there's other things that you do with their time to generate business. And then the other thing, just that this is a kind of a major point, but what tends to happen to everyone, including associates, is once you start making money, all these things will happen that will handcuff you to a job. So you may go out and buy a nice car, you may buy a house, who knows, but it's the same thing that happens to partners. So a lot of times they will car, they got a house, family, and all of a sudden all that stuff will be upgraded to be more and more expensive. The schools will get expensive for their kids, the expenses for their homes, all these sorts of stuff. So that they become golden handcuffs. And so then what happens is there are all these things that I've talked about, which is the pressure to generate business, the pressure to stay a partner, the pressure to generate more business, the pressure to get hours, the pressure to keep your bills low, the pressure to bill high. All this stuff becomes exacerbated because you need to pay all these expenses you have personally, and you'll feel trapped. People will become drug addicts. They will become very depressed. They will become alcoholics. They'll quit. They'll get divorced. All these things will happen. And it's very scary. So what I've seen happen to a lot of partners is they can't take it and it just becomes very difficult. And sometimes they die early, or other times they just quit or they do something else. And after doing that, they're often get divorced. And I don't know why that is. It's maybe because they don't feel comfortable around their spouse anymore, or maybe their spouse doesn't feel comfortable around them and resents being pushed down to a different lifestyle. I don't know, but it happens. And it can be very difficult and stressful. It really takes its toll on people. You can see it in their faces, and it can be very hard. But as an associate, you have other options. You may not have committed to all these expenses and things in it. So you're not trapped. So that is the presentation, and I hope this information helps you.